So today we are going through trying to really this, as I said in the email, this is the key application of the principles that we've been building on. And ultimately the chief result, the chief benefit is going to be intimacy. So we're going to try and draw the line. How do you get from one to the other? What is intimacy, or what is safety, and what's the relationship to intimacy? So let's dive in. So safety. So this is kind of a buzz. So there's a big concept in relationships, but um, it's it's very, very broad. Safety as a concept. So safety in a relationship is the belief that you are that when you are seen, you will be loved. So that's obviously very broad. It certainly covers the idea of physical safety, and I think that's a lot of what people kind of most naturally think of whenever they think of safety. But it is in order for true intimacy to be connected with safety, then it's much broader than that. So what I'm going to do is kind of try and break down the parts of this definition and get a better idea of like what we're talking about here. Belief, the belief that when you are seen, you will be loved. The thing to say about this is that it's a subjective experience. The you Safety is kind of in the eye of the beholder, basically. Now, whether or not you are in some sense objectively safe, someone might not be experiencing personal safety, right? You kind of, the extreme example is phobias that, you can think, like, you've probably heard of, there's some what feels like pretty outlandish phobias out there that create this subjective experience that they're not safe, right? The one that comes to my mind, I think there is a kind of a documented phobia of prominent objects on the left side of your body, something like that. So if someone has like a wall on the left side of their body, they tend to sense this unsafe feeling, right? Now, there could be literally nothing in the environment threatening them, except they feel that threat. The best thing to do for us in relationships is assume that there is a very strong connection between the subjective experience of safety and the objective reality. So, okay, so a lot of people, what they will like blame the other person for not feeling safe, and just kind of call them ridiculous. Like, even as I was describing that phobia, I felt a certain kind of like, like, wow, how ridiculous type of thing, right? I'm sure that came across in like my tone or whatever. Um, we do that kind of stuff with our, or we can do that kind of stuff with our partner when to our mind there's no threat. The application then is we ought to assume that if they're not feeling safe, that there's something that we can do to help them feel safe, right? So that kind of honors this strong connection, this strong correlation between subjective and objective. So to kind of push yourself to say, okay, if you're not feeling safe, how can I help you feel, believe that if you are seen, you will be loved. The other side of that application is that it is a subjective experience. So while at the same time you want to push yourself to honor the other person's subjective experience, you also can't control their subjective experience. So again, there's that, there are those on the relationship model, you can control what you can control, and you should control what you can control. But you still can't literally create the experience for the other person. And so that's kind of the chief tension that we're trying to walk. And you walk it ultimately by saying, let me do what I can do to help your experience, and to kind of commit to being creative with helping your spouse in that belief. And yet at the same time, knowing kind of in the back of your mind that you can't create that experience for them. So let me slow down there. So what sticks out about that as either true or false?
So like safety is a subjective experience, and you should control what you can control. Like those are two things that I've been working on a lot. Because they're things that I struggle with. I try to control the reaction that I get, and only present what I think will get the favorable response. Like both of those kind of strike true with me. Like, yeah, you can't control the reaction. You have to control what you can.
Yeah. It's frustrating because you can do everything you can do to control your process, but you can't control the result, right? You can't guarantee a result. And that for that can just be a really kind of off-putting thing for some people, whether or not that's the camp you fall into. But yeah. Okay.
I have one more thing that jumped out to me, which is that if you're then the person in the relationship feeling unsafe, part of becoming safe is a perception change for yourself. If you know intellectually that you are safe and this is okay, that since the other person can't create it, the only leftover pieces, it has to come from you.
Yes, that's a good addition. Thank you. Absolutely.
Like if you're the one feeling unsafe, your partner cannot make you safe. Won't be possible.
Yes.
Which again, like you were saying, there's influence there. Like that doesn't mean your partner is just gonna go off and be like, well, I can't make you safe, so I'm gonna like run after you with a knife. But because we tend to do that, right? Well, if I can't make you safe, that means I'm gonna be an awful person. It's not how it works.
Right. Yeah. We can tend to like give up. And that's kind of that judgment piece can come along and like, well, this is your problem now. Like I've done everything I can do. And often, yeah, I know I even, now I feel not irregularly that with Sandy, that it's like this temptation to think I've done everything I can do. It's like, this is on you now. But usually if I push myself, it's like, if I can be creative, there's probably a way to help her, believe that she's going to be loved in this. Yeah, that's a helpful addition. Thank you.
Hey, Nick, I had a thought on that.
Yes.
It was jumping back towards the start, but I like your phobia example. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I gotcha.
Okay. Just because, what is a dumb idea to somebody, or it just doesn't make any sense to somebody, could be, a very valid reason to somebody else. And so you can't discount. I guess you can't discount. I can't discount what I feel because Amanda says something different is how she feels, even if I don't think it's a very good reason.
Yeah, right.
Because it is a good reason. It is a good reason to her. I just don't understand that.
Definitely. Yeah. It kind of goes, whenever I hear that, yeah, I just think about this category of honoring the other person. Yeah, even if you can't understand it, you can honor them. And if you think about it, it's like, sometimes I'll think, whenever, and really it's helpful to just switch it around, right? Like how often have you felt concerned about something that your spouse was like, that's not concerning, right? So maybe that's helpful. Or sometimes I think about God and prayer, like whenever we are freaking out about something or just concerned about something, God, if he encourages us to pray to him and to seek his face, even though in his sovereignty he knows this is going to be fine. Like I have all of this written down. Every day of your life is written in my book, and it is going to be fine. He knows, he completely knows, but he says, come to me, and I will love you. And like, let me see what's in your heart, and I promise to love you. Yeah. So sometimes I think about it from that angle. Yeah, it's helpful. Thanks, guys. Secondly, when you are seen, showing the things about yourself that are sensitive. So the things that we're talking about here is really any of your fears, any of your desires, opening your heart to the other person, right? Whenever you let yourself be seen, you are kind of opening yourself up to hurt. You're taking the risk, right? It's risky to open yourself up to in ways that maybe you've been guarded in the past, or or maybe you just have never, you're taking a risk. Maybe you've never taken that risk before, something like that. So, this goes from literally anything from, I don't want you to put the dishes on the counter. That's you are in some small sense there, or maybe not so small, you are letting yourself be seen. You're letting your heart, your desires, your fears, you're letting yourself be seen. It goes all the way from there to anything you could imagine. I'd like to have sex tonight. That you're opening yourself up to being rejected. You're communicating your fears and desires in a way that you're taking a risk to be vulnerable. So but then it goes much deeper than that. Even I feel rejected, to tell to tell your partner that, I'm worried that you'll reject me. I'm worried that you'll think I'm dumb. Communicating your heart like that, you're opening yourself up. You're taking the risk that they could reject you. And vulnerability is hard, right? Why do you think it's hard? Whenever you think about kind of opening yourself up, and sometimes whenever Sandy and I were really going through hard things, I kept having this vision of, I don't use the term vision in like a necessarily a theological sense, but this picture in my mind of kind of me like ripping open my chest and like taking out my heart and giving it to her and working on if you stab this, you can do it. Like, I'm letting you do this. You can either hold on to this and honor it, or you could stab it, but I have to give it to you, kind of thing. That's hard. For me, it was hard just because, I mean, well, first of all, it sucks. Second, like, the basic answer is rejection. The basic answer is that we fear rejection, right? But beyond that, why do you find it hard? To the extent that you find it hard, why do you find it hard to be vulnerable? Or if you don't find it hard, what's the encouragement for you there to kind of be vulnerable?
I think for me, I find it hard just because I'm a perfectionist, and so like being vulnerable means showing your flaws and allowing Nathan to see like, oh, she doesn't do everything right the first time, or like this is what's really going on. I think that's at the root of it.
Yeah, great. You could kind of, in some sense, expose yourself as a failure or something, and Nathan might think less of you for not being able to succeed or something like that. That's great. Thanks. Yeah. Why else? Let's get one more.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, being vulnerable is very hard because, like, exposing a vulnerability may not be used against you now, but it might be used against you later.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with 7 siblings, and kind of leveraging against each other was a big part of growing up. So
yes,
yeah.
I think it's work too. To be vulnerable means you have to know what's going on for yourself. And I think it's hard to describe. And even when you think you know what you're going to be talking about, you end up hitting on things that touch places where you weren't even expecting to go.
Right. So I mean, I like that. Yeah, you might not even know what's going on in yourself, first of all, but even then you might get surprised at what comes out, and kind of in a way that you weren't ready for. And yeah, I think that's what you're saying, right? It's hard. It's a definite risk. And often in relationship with one another, there's just this question mark of will I be loved? And in a certain sense, that's almost what we're trying to overcome is, okay, how do we deal with that feeling so that we can be intimate with each other. So defining what love is we want to have the kind of love that we've received in the gospel, and we're gonna try and draw that out here. Like, what's the point, right? What's the point? It's hard, so why even take the risk? Ultimately, we take the risk because that is how we get to intimacy. When we've been vulnerable and we've been loved, that's what creates trust and security and all of those things that kind of run into and make up. I think whenever I've wrestled through these kind of ideas, it's tempting to kind of almost say like good enough is good enough, or to, you know, take the easy path. And one thing that challenged me in a way to sort of not get complacent, basically, and in my struggle there, was I knew that I did want deep connection, and I did want full-orbed intimacy, and you're just not going to get it in, like, whenever you're sitting in your bunker. I often think of, like, if I'm trying to be safe by myself, then I often picture myself like in a bunker, right? Like, nothing's getting in. I'm technically safe, but there's not love there. So there's what feels challenging. What feels either true? What are you connecting with, or what are you challenged by? Or what questions do you have? Okay, so let me see here. Now I'm going to stop that and share this. Okay. So, like I said, we want to, the best way that we can grow in becoming the people that can give this to our spouse is to be receiving it from Christ. So what I want to do is kind of go through, like, is there are things that kind of create the question, am I loved? And then there are things that create the question, or that kind of assure you, or we'll say, am I loved? Alternatively, we could call it like, am I loved or am I safe? Alternatively, in the gospel, we have things that do really assure us that I am loved, or safe. So let's fill in just these categories. What, as you think about now, of course, this is kind of assuming that Christ is a safe relationship for us, right? And that we've experienced that in some sense, which I'm just assuming, like, everybody here has experienced that in some, like, that's part of the reason that we call on Christ, is we feel safe enough that we know that we've been welcomed in. And so we're able to, like, take the risk to you know, confess sins and show weakness and all of that kind of stuff. That's part of calling on the name of Christ. So already we have experienced the safest relationship that we ever will experience, and we will experience for all of eternity. So we already know a lot about what it is that creates a sense of safety, and by extension, what doesn't, right? So let's fill it in. Like, as you think about your relationship with Christ, what convinces you that Christ is a safe relationship for you, that if you come to him, you will receive love, or that you are safe? Sometimes it's easier, though, to kind of access, like, well, if I like, in what ways do I in what ways keeps me from feeling safe. Sometimes that's a little easier to access for people. So start wherever you want, but so an example, let me give you an example. So an example of, am I loved, would be, I've already talked about this one, like, will I be rejected? Will you reject me? Or just, rejection in general. Another example would be, to feel judged, and to feel judged and ultimately condemned. So that's kind of example. And then the opposite of that, what creates safety, obviously, is, well, Christ accepts me. There is this depth of acceptance. Can't spell. There's this depth of acceptance. There's, interestingly, like, there is judgment, but in Christ it leads to, freedom. It leads to, what is the term there? Condemnation versus justification. It leads to a welcoming in, a cleansing from, anything that would make us condemned, that kind of thing, right? So you don't have to use, I should probably get rid of, like, the Christianese type of language. But what sticks out to you? What creates this sense of this? What kind of goes against this, a feeling of safety, or what really helps a feeling of safety?
I mean, in these instances, it's believing the truth of Scripture to a soul depth. Whatever the particular fear happens to be, it has to be part of your character and not based on the insecurities. Which, again, easier said than done, not intended to be a flippant statement.
For sure.
But most of us have places in our lives where we do feel completely loved and safe, and it doesn't matter what happens on the left-hand side. Because our belief is strong enough that we're just like, you must just be mistaken. Like, that's not how it works. Okay. And we don't feel that shame. We don't feel the condemnation. We don't feel the rejection, because we're like, I'm good. You go do you. Because we just, our belief is so strong.
Yes. Right. And maybe I would put, like, this, maybe the opposite thing of that would be, like, just uncertainty. Does that feel fair? Like, will you, like, if the question is hanging in the air, will you love me? Will you accept me? Will you keep me safe? Then that uncertainty heightens the risk. But if you really believe it, if you take it into your soul and you really kind of, you believe it with your core, then it's like, okay, no, there's no risk here because I believe it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, and maybe the word that I'm looking for there is identity. Like, that conversation can't change your identity or what you think about yourself.
Okay.
Like that, so the uncertainty is uncertain in my identity in some way. And so it's the belief in your identity of whatever the particular topic happens to be.
Okay. Yeah, it's a belief. Like, is this true about me? And who am I? And it's like, who does God say that I am? And so that I'm safe in a given context, like whatever the context is, and it probably changes, but is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, really stupid example. Say I went to Keith and I was like, Keith, I want to dye my hair blue. It is my dream. I've wanted it since I was 8 years old.
Yes.
And he's like, what? No, like, I don't want that. I'd be like, that's fine, but no, like, I still want to dye my hair blue. But that would have no bearing on my character. I wouldn't take that to mean I was being childish because I just wanted to dye my hair blue. And so
Yes.
it's the idea that like what they say in their response doesn't change your perception of yourself. And regardless
that's
whether or not I decide, okay, I'm just gonna like go dye my hair blue because it's hair, or if I say, okay, yeah, my husband gets his say in how I dye my hair. Whichever way you go, it doesn't shake you internally.
Yes.
Now, silly example, but you know, sometimes marriage is all about all those silly little things that kind of add up
for sure.
or, you know, that take the big issue.
Yeah. There's a certain, like, I'm picturing like my feet are on the rock, and the uncertainty of like, am I safe with my partner? That actually doesn't change the like safety that you have in yourself and in Christ, because that's more foundational.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think you're probably getting toward I think you're getting toward application of this, which is great. Okay, yeah. So what other, yeah, as you're thinking about your relationship with Christ, what is it that helps you feel safe? What is it that helps you, or yeah, we'll just start there. Like, what is it that helps you feel safe as you think about your relationship with Christ?
I think one other thing that goes off of like our identity is the like fact that we're adopted into God's family and we're children of God, and that's such like a simple statement, but it's also something that's incredibly hard to grasp and understand. So I think that's where a lot of our identity issues come from, because we're trying to make our identity and work or our spouse or something not right.
Yeah, I love that. We were outsiders. We were outsiders. We were rejected, but we've been brought in, and now we belong. We, like, this is who we are. And that action that God took to take us from the outside and give us a place where we belong on the inside, that, like, you have experienced him doing that, and so it helps you feel safe. And he says, you belong here now. Like, is that kind of what you're saying, Amanda? Yeah, absolutely.
And I think like I kind of have a little understanding of just, so my younger brother's adopted, and so like just seeing how he like fits perfectly in our family, and like I've never thought of him as like not my brother. It's just like, I don't know, a real life experience, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. That's a real tangible, you have a real tangible experience there. Yeah. I added this idea of like being welcomed. Yeah. This that sticks out to me just because it's not like you're there by accident either. Like, it's not like God's sort of begrudgingly sort of, okay, fine, you can have a place, you know, but he, like, there was a party or whatever, like there's a celebration because you are at your place, like you've been welcomed. Yeah. I will leave any other thoughts to you guys to be thinking through this week, I guess. So the project then would be keep thinking, like, for you, be like completing this list of, in Christ, what helps me feel safe? His is it like, what kind of categories really stick out? Forgiveness, grace. I'll just throw a bunch of more at kind of at you, like yeah, mercy and grace. When you mess up, you are still going to get blessing instead of cursing. That creates this sense of safety. Another one is like provision. Like, you are going to be okay. I promise that you will have what you need. What we want to do is we want to understand why those things help us feel safe. Because in an analogous kind of way, then we want to ask, okay, how can I be becoming, it's terrible English. How can I become this type of person for my spouse, right? So 2 parts to the project then would be complete this list for yourself, what helps you feel safe, but then speak with your spouse and ask them, in what ways do you struggle to believe that if you're seen, that I will love you, that I will accept you, that I'm a safe person to let yourself be seen with, right? So that is a question that you take to your spouse and talk about that. How does that get communicated?